Morning, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. A copy of the Open Meetings Act is located on the north wall of the legislative chambers, and there is also an automatic external defibrillator that is available on the back wall of the legislative chambers. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We will begin with the agenda for the Douglas County Board of Equalization. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Boyle, Commissioner Kavanaugh, Commissioner Duda, Commissioner Kraft, Commissioner Morgan, Commissioner Rogers, Madam Chair.
Here. Item A, approval of the minutes of the Board of Equalization meeting held Tuesday, April 25th, 2017. And item B, call for a meeting and set Tuesday, May 9th, 2017 as a date for hearing on certified assessment corrections reflecting the addition of omitted property to the tax rolls or increased value on property. Is there a motion for A and B? Any questions or comments? Please vote.
Commissioner Rogers. There we go. Motion passes.
Item C, is there anyone in the chamber wishing to speak to the Board of Equalization about an item not on the agenda? Seeing none, we will begin with the resolutions. Item D is denial of the 2017 permissive exemption applications. And Mr. Goodwillie, do you want to introduce this for us? And if this, I think this is the one that includes the Salvation Army.
It does,
which
Commissioner.
They have requested a layover because they could not be here today.
Mike Goodwillie, Douglas County Assessor, Register of Deeds. This is the group of proposed license denials that we have. Let me choose 3 of these to start with toward the middle of the page. Because they're not like the others. Are we missing something, sir? Oh, okay. Well, cool. Gets a second, we can race them. I would direct your attention first to the 3 about halfway down the first page, Omaha Small Business Network, because they are not like the others. Though that is a property that has several bays for rent on North 24th Street. All of those bays are being rented either for nonprofit or non-charitable entities. We believe they fail the use test. They did not apply for an exemption last year, and they were denied when they applied in 2015. Now, let's touch base on the others, and essentially these are the properties connected with retail stores that we discussed last year. It is our belief that the predominant use of these properties is not charitable, but instead as simply retail stores. And what our Supreme Court has said in more recent case law, although none of it yesterday, when entities, nonprofit entities, engage in what appear to be commercial activities, when that's the predominant use of the real property, that property ought to come on the tax rolls. There is an additional element with respect to Goodwill Industries. The third part of the test for exemption is that no part of the gain or profit from the property should be used or should go to the owner or the user. The state in its regulations has defined that as distribution of profits to directors, officers, something more than reasonable salaries paid to employees. And if you look at the last couple of 990Ts, or 990s rather, that the organization has filed, it appears that the salary and compensation, salary and bonuses, especially for officers, seems to outstrip anything local by a wide margin, and even seems to be excessive when compared with some other goodwills in in the Midwest that seem to do a similar volume of sales. So those are the recommendations we're making. With that, I'll take any questions.
Is there anyone here wishing to speak on this agenda item?
Oh, I'm sure there'll be many.
If you are, go ahead and come on forward, and then state your name and who your address and who you're with, please.
Howard Hahn, QTAC Rock, 1650 Farnham, Omaha 68102. I'm here with my partner, Buck Heim, and Amanda Brewer, who is the Executive Director of Habitat for Humanity. Address unknown. I don't essentially disagree with Mike Goodwillie, I mean, as to what the law is. We have, it's there's no question that it's the actual use of the property that governs. It's not the income from the property. Mike tends to, his favorite case is a case, the Berean bookstore case. And that is, you have other favorites? And the distinguishing feature there is they were in not just taking care of the folks in their church, they were also selling just generally in the community, and also ran a wholesale operation. And I'll get to the facts as it gets to the restore stores that Habitat runs. Basically, I agree with him kind of on the law, maybe some different nuances, but our facts are essentially different than facts that of those cases. We don't generate a lot of income. I mean, we generate income from the store. It does not often cover, let's say different. In most years, it will not cover its own expenses when you put a load on it, an overhead load that is not high. There's a case out of Lincoln, Young Women's Christian Association. Reason and authority are opposed to the proposition that an institution otherwise charitable will be deprived of that character by the mere fact that charges for facilities and services are made to individual members, which do not result in profit, but which will fail in the aggregate, even to make the institution self-sustaining. There, it was a question of low-income housing for women in downtown Lincoln. And I think we have the same sort of situation here. The statute uses the term exclusively, which I think Mike would agree is a predominant activity, primary or predominant activity. We believe that our actual use is control. Since 2008, we have been engaged in job training. We partner with vocational rehabilitation, with workforce solutions, and with county general assistance in providing that training. Approximately 100 adults, unemployed adults, are enrolled in training programs at our facilities. The other thing that we argued last year, and I guess, is that one of the one definition for charitable activities is relieving the burden on government. Since we've started these stores, over 20,000 tons of material have been kept out of the landfill. That would be a relief on governmental activities. As well as material that's collected at these restore stores is used in the Habitats program in the houses they build. Any questions?
Commissioner Morgan?
Just curious, let me get the mic on here. When you said, you know, you operate these and it hardly pays you overhead, if it even does pay that, just curious why you'd continue to operate it. You might give us some reasons why and the importance of it, I thought.
Mr. Morgan, the purpose is then would be to serve the charitable purposes of the organization. Job training, one of the additional purposes, frankly, is supporting home ownership and improvement by low-income people by having materials that can be incorporated in their houses and can be sold to them at below market rates.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Commissioner Kavanaugh?
Mr. Hine, you indicated that since 2008 you were engaged in a collaborative effort with our general assistance and another entity. What was that?
Vocational Rehab, Heartland, and Heartland Workforce Solutions.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I'm going to tell you that's the weakest part of my argument because I don't know as many facts about job training as I should. So, Amanda? Let's get somebody on the ground.
Very good.
Hi there, Amanda Brewer. Am I supposed to spell it?
Address and who you were with.
With Habitat for Humanity, 1701 North 24th Street.
What's your position there, Amanda?
I'm the executive director.
Okay. So I was asking Howard about what do you do with this job training program? I'm interested in that. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Right, yeah, so we work with local organizations that help place people in job training opportunities, and that's not the primary mission of the ReStore, but it's certainly one of the benefits that it provides. And for those of you familiar with people needing general assistance, support, voc rehab, employment first, sometimes the folks have very little work experience or not as many skills, and so this is a comfortable place for people to go and learn some basic skills in order so that they could increase their chance of getting a job.
So these people engaged in this program, you say you have 100 right now engaged in this program?
Through it,
Okay.
annually.
Annually,
Mhm.
okay. And they work in this store, is that right?
Yes, as we call them volunteers.
Sure.
Because that's how we think of everyone. So whoever comes through our door, we're a heavy volunteer organization. We've got 12,000 volunteers annually, and one component of that is this job training aspect. And you could say that's true with any volunteer that comes. We have a lot of people that come and are interested in learning construction that maybe don't need to go through a program such as Employment First or General Assistance. But in this case, focusing on those organizations, they can come there, they can get job experience, job training, volunteer experience, and then that's something that could help them get a job in the future.
So are all of these people general assistant recipients when they come to you?
No.
Do you have any idea what percentage of them would be general assistance recipients?
Of the 100, I mean, if I were to guess, it would be a third.
Okay. And at the end of that period of training, do you help them with job placement?
We don't, no.
Okay. Does
But we
voc
can
rehab-
provide. But we can provide a reference.
Very good.
Which is something, as you know.
It is, and this is good work. I'm just trying to track the impact of this work. So you've got 100 people involved, maybe a third of them are general assistance recipients. You give them the training with voc rehab and Heartland, and then at the end of that period of time, maybe they get a job. Is that right?
Right.
And do you have any idea what percentage of them actually do get jobs?
It would be a guess because that's not something we track. 'Cause that's not the main purpose.
Right.
But we estimate 20%.
That's very good.
It's better than nothing. And we've also hired some of the folks ourselves. It gives us a chance to see who the best workers are, and just because somebody's not good at one thing doesn't mean they can't be good at something else. And unfortunately, I don't want to get on a soapbox, but you can see that a lot of times people in the lower income community don't have that chance to explore what they'd be really good at. And I do see that at our stores it gives them a chance, either through maybe a more introverted job, such as moving stuff around, or a more extroverted job, such as working with customers.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay.
Howard, I have one more question for you.
Yes, sir.
Relative to this solid waste that you take out of the stream of solid waste that leads to our landfill. Could you tell me a little bit more about that?
Again, I would probably have Amanda, unless she disappeared on me.
Oh.
The interesting thing is this is too intellectual perhaps, but there's a case out of New York that talks about.
Could you talk into the
I'm sorry.
microphone?
There's a case out of York that talks about doing a landfill is a proper exempt purpose. But that case is a few years old. What I think we're seeing now is, in fact, we don't want things in the landfill, and so as to details of that, I got a summary from Amanda of 20,000 tons, not annually, but since the beginning, that are taken out for recycling purposes. And I will ask her to give you details.
And I was getting a question from Mr. Goodwillie, so I'll need the question repeated, please.
Okay. This 20,000 tons of solid
Yeah.
waste that you folks have taken out of the stream of solid waste that leads to our landfill. When did you start doing that?
Since inception, 2000.
Okay, so it's 20,000 since 2000. 20,000 tons.
The number you gave me was 20,000 tons.
Since 2000 or since 2008?
You didn't give me a number, a date on that.
Okay, I think it's been since inception.
Okay.
I just don't want to contradict what he had just said, but.
No, we're just trying to get a grasp of
We will try to have a consistent story.
Yeah, sure. What kind of waste is this? What are we talking about?
Yeah, so I mean, I think, from the environmental aspect, that's the part that I really see as part of the mission of the store, is keeping things out of the landfill, and we see it. We see it on the job site as we're building houses, that things go in the dump that don't need to go in the dump, because before we had our store, there was no outlet for that, and this gives people an outlet in order to reuse, have a way to reuse materials. And we're a little, our city is a little slow, and city as a whole, not the city offices, but as a whole a little slower in getting there, and there's still a lot of things that go in the landfill. But for those people that are conscientious, there's a place to take it. We did just launch a deconstruction program last year through the Restore, which I'm very proud of. It was funded by the Nebraska Environmental Trust, and that allows us to go into homes or go into the houses that we're demolishing in North Omaha that have old growth lumber and things of value. Instead of just having the whole thing bulldozed and go in the landfill, we're able to salvage that material. We have to have a place for the material. So, the store allows that, but you have to also pay for the cost to run the store. So the store can't be something where you don't sell, or the store would not be sustainable. So, now I'm probably digressing a little bit. I do think that environmental component is really important. Things that we see, sometimes really good things that, there's a call from a hotel. Someone was driving by, and the shower units that had been ordered, they were all brand new shower units, were the wrong size, and they were all being thrown in the dump. And we weren't able to get all of them, but we rushed over there to try to save them so that someone else could use them. And so that's an example of a brand new thing, but lumber and paint and doors, windows, hardware, brass hardware. No one wants brass hardware now. We take the brass hardware. We sometimes paint it, make it look nice again, or sometimes people don't care about brass hardware and they'll buy it. So that allows us to keep the things out of the landfill.
Very good. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Commissioner Boyle?
Yes, I think I'd like to ask Ms. Brewer this question. Do you have, first of all, when you build homes, I've seen, of course, a lot of video, and of course, President Carter, who I respect tremendously, building homes and so forth. What is President Carter and those other people, what are they paid? How much do you pay them?
President Carter?
Yeah, what do you pay him? What do you pay all the people that are working on those houses? What do you pay? What's your hourly rate?
I see what you're saying. Yes, it's a volunteer. So we say President Carter's our most famous volunteer. So he's not an employee, but he's a volunteer.
Okay, so it's volunteers that build these homes.
Yes.
Okay, and what
now
about...
we have to have a paid person leading the volunteers,
Sure.
because we need quality control, meeting city code, so forth.
That makes a lot of sense. And I assume you have to pay for permits and so forth.
Yes, and
So
all
you-
the materials.
Right, okay. And what about the people who move into those homes? How much do you pay them per hour?
They also are volunteering.
They're volunteers too?
Yes.
Okay. So you have all volunteers,
Yeah.
except for the paid person who's overseeing the construction, which makes sense. So if you go out of business, who takes your place? Who takes your place of the Habitat? Not you personally, but who takes the place of Habitat?
Right. So from the Habitat for Humanity itself as an organization, we're in fulfilling a niche that's otherwise unfulfilled. We're working with what's considered the very low income population, people at 30 to 60% of HUD median income. So those families aren't being served otherwise in terms of home ownership. And what we provide there is a stability, and low income families have a tendency to be forced to move more often than someone that would have a medium income. And so this creates stability so their family doesn't need to move so much. And yeah, so there's no technical competitors in that. There's others that are partners with us. Holy Name Housing does similar work. They do a good job. They serve a little bit higher income. And Omaha Economic Development does maybe more multifamily. There's some low-income housing tax credit projects that don't do what we do. And then in terms of the restore, I feel the same way. Before we opened the store, there wasn't a place to take those items. In fact, I know this because people were still bringing the items to us, because inherently people don't want to throw good things in the dump, but there was nowhere to take them, so they take them to us, and our warehouse was just becoming overflowed with stuff that you can't just use in any house. You can't just use any cabinet set in any house because it has to be the right dimensions and so forth. And so we use as much as we can from the stores, and that's the first place we look, especially for our rehabs that demand a little bit maybe more character, that we can be a little bit more creative with what we're putting in there. So in terms of the restore, there would also not be a local competitor.
Well,
or need being met, as you nicely said it.
I'm sorry.
I called it a competitor, but
Yep.
It's a need being met. There would be a gap.
Well, and in the interest of disclosure, I was on the board of Holy Name Housing
Yeah.
for 20 years, and we built close to 500 homes, and in conjunction with you, and it's my belief that a home can really stabilize a city. When
Absolutely.
people have a home, there's pride and all the things that go with it. It changes people's lives. So I think you fulfill a really important part of our community, and I'll be honest, I think it's a disgrace that you're here today to have to defend your work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kavanaugh.
I just wanted to echo Commissioner Boyle's sentiments. I think that Habitat does great work. I wasn't aware of these other two components that you're doing. Ms. Brewer, I commend you for reaching out and taking a kind of a forward-looking view, both environmentally and from an employment point of view to our community. So thanks very much. Thanks for what you do.
No other questions? Any other?
No.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next.
Hello, my name is Sharif Luwaru, and I am with the Malcolm X Memorial Foundation, 3448 Evans Street.
I was just going to say, I think
Okay,
you're
then
the
I'm
next item.
coming back later.
It was nice to meet you, though.
I'm not trying to discourage
Thank you.
Mr. Flores, but his item is up.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Jordan Adam. I'm an attorney with the Fraser Stryker Law Firm, 500 Energy Plaza, 409 South 17th Street in Omaha. I represent Goodwill. Sitting here with me today is Paulie Bishop, the interim CEO at Goodwill. And as the board probably knows, this matter involves 5 retail store properties that are here in Douglas County. One's over at 72nd and Ames, another one's 108th and Blondo, another's 180th and Q, another one 144th and Industrial, and the other one's 156th and Maple. We were here on this issue last year, about the same time, back in May of 2016. Mr. Goodwillie asked that these properties be taxed. They haven't been taxed in years, and Goodwill has been operating for more than 50 years. This board found that Goodwill was entitled to a charitable tax exemption, and I would note that the same arguments were made last year as they were this year. One was we're not using, allegedly, the property for a charitable purpose, and number two, that we are obtaining an inappropriate financial gain. Those were the allegations that were made last year, and the board rejected those allegations. Now, so we have an interim year, and normally these things last for 4 years, but we're back here again. I suspect that one of the reasons why we're back here again is that Mr. Goodwillie has to keep objecting every year. If he thinks that you got it wrong, he has to bring you back here every year. And if we don't get a resolution at TURC, the Tax Equalization Review Commission, on the 2016 hearing, we're back here again, I suppose that he'll be back here again to preserve his rights. But I will tell you that this case is in TURC right now, and it's being fully litigated. And you don't have to take my word for it. Mr. Goodwillie, in his office of the county assessor, has served us with over 200 interrogatory requests. They're serving us with numerous document requests, and they're asking for all of our financial information, all the data that we have, and so forth. And so that hearing, we have a hearing on that coming up on May 19th. Now, TURC is actually going to have this hearing, I suspect, will take place at the end of this year or early 2018. And at that hearing, the issue that will be resolved is the same issue. So, and I suspect that the assessor is going to take depositions in that case, is going to serve more written discovery, and there will be a full hearing. And the way things are going, I don't know where this case is going to end up. But what I do know is that we're going to have some guidance and some resolution from TURC as to whether or not we are, in fact, as a matter of law, entitled to a tax exemption, and I believe that we are. So what we're asking for is to keep the tax exemption in place. This issue is going to be dealt with by the Tax Equalization Review Commission. If somebody loses there, it could ultimately be taken up to the Nebraska Supreme Court. I don't know where it's going right now, but I think those are some possibilities. Now, let me just briefly direct your attention, I guess, to a couple legal arguments that I would make. And the first, that the issue, there's two, like I said, is Mr. Goodwillie saying that we don't use the property allegedly for a charitable purpose and that we're conferring some sort of a financial gain. So, as we all know, Goodwill, the mission is to prepare people with disabilities and disadvantages for work. Goodwill does that in many ways, but most importantly through its retail stores. The Work Experience Program is what they call it. The Work Experience Program is Goodwill's oldest program. Goodwill has been doing it here in Omaha for over 50 years. Goodwill brings in high school students with disabilities to gain real-world work experience. They spend part of the day in Goodwill's store and part of it in the classroom. And I haven't heard, I read the letter that the assessor sent to the board last year and this year, and I'll say that the letter largely overlapped from what he said last year. I haven't heard Mr. Goodwill or the assessor's office say that we're not a charitable entity or that we're not using this property in a charitable manner or that training disadvantaged people on real estate is not an exempt use. But I will say that, believe it or not, this board decided this very issue, a very similar issue, back in 1925. The In re Good Shepherd case, 113 Neb 489, 1925 case. In that case, a similar situation, as in here, you had a laundromat that was being operated by the House of Good Shepherd. They owned a laundromat, and the owner used the laundromat to provide job training for individuals roughly between the ages of 14 and 20 who were less fortunate and, as the Supreme Court said, quote, subnormal in intellect. And remarkably, the owner of that property received a considerable income. All right, the laundromat was being operated for the hotels and so forth, and they were getting a profit from running that laundromat. And the Supreme Court in that case found that the laundry was used as a means of rehabilitating and helping young individuals become accustomed to the workforce, and found that they were entitled to a tax exemption. So there is case law here, and I disagree with Mr. Goodwillie's characterization of Nebraska law as not allowing for this type of tax exemption. It is there, it's in the law. In re Good Shepherd has never been overruled. It's still good law. The Union College case is another case that Mr. Goodwillie cites, also has not been overruled, is good law as well. And the other thing, what came up last year that I'll say is the Pioneer Village case, okay? That was a Supreme Court case from 2012 or 2013. I believe it was Justice Stephan that was writing the opinion. And in that case, the Supreme Court, there was a motel that was being operated in that case. A motel operating a revenue and profit and so forth. And in that case, the motel was determined to be tax exempt. So so we have that most recent case law. So the other thing I'd say, 2 more points, is this is not the first time that a county board has decided whether or not a goodwill is tax exempt. There are cases in other states as well that have found that goodwill is entitled to a tax exemption under similar statutes, as Nebraska's tax exempt statute. There's a case from Missouri, 1948. There's another case from Oregon in 2007. Specifically, the Oregon case from 2007 held that a donation site operated by Goodwill employed people with barriers to employment and gave them training to do working at a job, and that was tax exempt. So that brings us to the issue that the second part of the test is whether or not the financial gain aspect of it. And what I'll tell you is I read over Mr. Goodwilly's letter, and the data that he relies upon is data from 2014 and 2015. Now the question, as the board knows, is whether or not the property is actually conferring, not that it's conferring a financial gain, but whether or not that financial gain or profit is being distributed to the owners, officers, and so forth. Now, the test is reasonable salaries are exempt from that. Now, what I can tell you is that the Nebraska Supreme Court has never decided, never even addressed the issue of what the reasonable salary is or not. And Mr. Goodwilly doesn't cite any case law on that. But what I can say is that our Goodwill stores, those retail stores, the profits that have been made there, first of all, it's okay to have a profit if you're a non-profit entity working at this type of property. But none of that had been distributed to the officers and so forth. Now, to set salary in the past, Goodwill had relied upon independent third-party consultants to review market data and so forth and to set the compensation. And what I can say is that Mr. Goodwilly talks about stuff from 2014 and 2015, and he doesn't talk about what's going on in 2017. And so what I can tell you in 2017 is Goodwill has hired 2 more independent consultants to, again, look at their compensation structure. The Silverstone Group did analysis in 2016, and right now Goodwill is working with Quantum Governance as well. There's been obviously a change in leadership, and I can say that the executive compensation has gone down by almost $700,000. And no bonuses were paid in 2016, and no bonuses have been budgeted for 2017. And Goodwill has actually, and so I think that when you look at all the facts and all the information, Goodwill is not getting a financial gain. And the question is whether or not, if there is a financial gain, if it's being distributed to the owners. In 2017, none of this money from the retail stores is going to be distributed to Goodwill. It's going to go back into their programs, into their mission programs. So what we would ask in conclusion and Ms. Bishop can maybe talk about this a little bit more, but we would ask for to grant the tax exemption again. As I said, likely what is going to happen with Turk is that these 2 cases are going to be consolidated. And I suspect that, well, I can say that I think these 2 cases are going to be consolidated. The issues are the same. They're going to be brought up there. If Mr. Goodwilly loses, or there's going to be an appeal, I would imagine, regardless of what the outcome is today, I would imagine that they're going to be both consolidated with Turk. So we would ask that the tax exemption remain in place and wait for a ruling from Turk.
Commissioner Kavanaugh?
You have outlined for us kind of where you are in terms of appealing past decisions of this board, right?
Yes, sir.
So which years are currently being appealed by you?
Not by us. The 2016
are on appeal, I'm sorry.
2016 is the only one, and the county assessor appealed that, and they hired independent counsel. Okay.
Yes, I'm aware of that. And during that year, what we're talking about in terms of compensation packages, you had a CEO. Do you know what he was being paid in 2016?
In 2016, I don't have, Paulie might have the numbers a little bit more.
Really?
We have.
You don't know?
Well, I mean, I can give you an approximation. I mean, what?
Okay. You indicated that Goodwill had retained some compensation experts to review your compensation package, is that right?
That's correct.
When did you do that?
I think the one was hired in, the most recent one has been the Silverstone Group that was hired in late 2016. And then we have another one, the Quantum Governance, that was hired in early 2017.
Okay. Because I think it's fair to say that everybody's aware that the compensation package for the senior management at Goodwill that came to light through the investigative reporting of local media was way out of whack. Wouldn't you agree with that?
I disagree with that, sir, respectfully. Based upon we had the compensation was looked at through market surveys that we performed. I do respectfully disagree with that.
Oh, you do?
I do, sir.
Okay.
Do you care if I ask something?
Go ahead.
So if you respectfully do not agree with that, why would it be reduced so much then?
Well, we don't, like I said, there was a change in leadership and so forth. And again, we're focusing on best practices and how can we improve the organization. And that's what we're doing. That's what we're moving forward on doing.
Okay. It seems like a large change.
Well, again, like I said, this is something that we're continuing to evaluate and continuing to look at. And so what we're here for today is the 2017 tax exemption. I mean, the issue on the 2016 appeal, that's in front of the Tax Equalization Review Commission. And Mr. Goodwill has the opportunity, they have asked us these questions to ask its interrogatories and so forth.
Commissioner Kavanaugh, go ahead.
Okay. This is kind of a big question because, as we understand it, you can't qualify for this exemption if the property is used for gain or profit by the owner or user. And that test is met if no part of the income from the property is distributed to owners, users, members, directors, officers, or private individuals, and the property is used to generate private profit, should not qualify for an exemption. So it strikes us as kind of odd that during the most recent past that we're looking at, the period when you've been before us, that the review that we have available shows that the Goodwill chapters that are similar in size, most similar in location, are Iowa City and Kansas City. And the Iowa City CEO received compensation of about $100,000, and there was only one person in the Kansas City operation who received compensation of $100,000 or more, with retail sales of similar size, while the Omaha Goodwill CEO, during the same period, we're talking 2015, received compensation of $358,870, and in 2014 was compensated to the tune of $867,636,000, which included a bonus of $500,000. While the Kansas City CEO's compensation was $134 in 2014 and $201 in 2015. Those numbers in Iowa City were like $191 and $192. How do you account for that when you're trying to say that this property is not used to generate private profit for individuals connected with Goodwill?
Let me, and I'll defer to Ms. Bishop on this point, okay?
Sure. I'm sorry.
Polly Bishop, who's the interim CEO at Goodwill.
Okay.
Okay. What I would say, and I would defer to Ms. Bishop, sir. But what I would say to you is that what you're talking about some data from 2014 and 15. And the issue and the test is what has happened in 2017, what is happening in 2017. And the issue is the use of the property and how the money from that property, how that is being allocated, okay? And so what I'm telling you is that money in 2017 is not going to executive compensation. It's not going to pay any officers or anything like that. It's going back into the program. It's not being, so the test is whether or not it's being distributed to the owners, officers, users. It's not going to be in 2017.
Well, would it be fair to say that based on these facts, it was before?
I'd have to go back and look at the records. No, I don't think it was. Frankly, I don't. We have never taken the money from those programs to just give a profit to the officers and employees and so forth. We haven't done that. It's gone back to our program. So no, I disagree with that.
So then how do you explain the factor of 3 or 4 times the compensation for the CEO of Omaha Goodwill compared to close comparisons to regional Goodwills in our area?
So I will speak on that. In 2014...
Could you just state your name
sure,
again?
Sure, it's Polly Bishop.
Thank you.
And so back in 2014, I would like to clarify what was in our media for compensation was not 100% correct. The $500,000 retention bonus that people are referring to was actually a retirement plan payout, and it was a 457 plan that had been in place since 1986. So that was a one-time payout. So that was one of those things that does not happen every year. And as far as comparing to Kansas City and Iowa City, one of the things that you have to look at when looking at compensation with the CEO position and other executive positions, it's not just that they're in that position. You have to look at the size of the organization. You have to look at the experience of that individual. You have to look at how long the individual has been there, and also what that individual has contributed to the organization over the years. So the CEO in Iowa City, I believe, is relatively new, as well as the CEO in Kansas City. I don't know their actual background or experience, but I know that they're relatively new to those positions, where our CEO had been there for 30+ years.
Okay, and how long have you been there?
I've been there for almost 10 years.
Okay. In 2015, it appears that Goodwill might have put $557,000 into job-related spending from jobs, from dollars generated from the retail stores. In the same year, you reported in excess of $25 million in gross receipts from admissions, merchandise sold, or services performed. In that same year, the salary and bonus for 2 people employed by Goodwill, the CEO and the executive vice president, was slightly more than $564,000. In other words, more than they put into job-related spending for that same year. And in 2015, the organization paid 12 more people in excess of $100,000. When Kansas City is paying 1, and I think Iowa City is in a similar view. You've been there for 10 years.
Sure.
What was your position before the position you currently occupy?
I was a CFO, and then prior to that, the finance director.
Okay.
And in my opinion, the folks that we have working at Goodwill are long-tenured folks. I'm probably one of the newest people there, being there 10 years. And when you refer to the 2 folks in 2015 that made over the $565,000, I think you said, those individuals had been there 30+ years and had contributed a lot to the organization.
So Kansas City has 1 person making $100,000, and you here in Omaha have, what was it? How many making more than $100,000?
12, I think.
12. How many are making more than $100,000 now?
6.
And the consultants that you've retained, have they indicated to you any comparables for that in the region or nation?
Sure. When we did the study with Silverstone back in October of 2016, we had them look at a couple different scenarios for salaries and bonuses, and the first was a 50-50 split with nonprofit, for-profit. The second was a 25-75 for-profit, nonprofit. And we're relying more on the 25-75% as a comparison for our organization. And all of the positions that would be in question are well within the guidelines of those ranges for the region. And to speak to Quantum, we've actually just started working with them a couple weeks ago, so that's we're in the beginning stages of that process. So I can't speak to what their salary comparisons will be right at this point.
Okay, as to what you put into job-related spending, you know, if you've got 6 making over 100,000, that's in excess of 600,000, I guess. And at the 2015 benchmark, you had 557,000 going into job-related spending from dollars generated by the retail stores. What's that number now?
You know, we are tracking it right now, and actually we're looking at, you know, how can we track that? When we reported the $557,000, it was ultimately the money that our organization was putting back into our programs, not including the overhead support that you have to consider as a normal business to run that business. So the 557 is just one part of that. To quantify the overhead piece of it, we would have to do additional calculations for that.
So maybe it would be a good idea for you, you know, to get some of those numbers to us in order for us to make an informed decision. I don't know about the other commissioners, but I wish we would have had some of these numbers last year when this came before us. And I don't intend to proceed on this matter without a full and complete accounting on these this year. So I don't know if we are inclined to lay this one over, but it doesn't sound to me like we're getting answers to key questions. If I was coming before this board in light of what's come to light in the last year, I might have some of these numbers available. And so, you know, I don't expect you to have them at your fingertips right now. If you didn't bring them, maybe we give them some more time to come back and answer some of these questions.
If I could, just to that last point that you made, we got notice of this yesterday. The statute gives us 10 days notice. So that's why, you know, we're here, we decided to go forward with this thing. So we would have liked more time, but we came here to try to answer the questions. And if you would like to have some more information, we'd be happy to lay this over and give you some more information. But 24 hours notice is kind of short notice.
If I may, if that is the case, we got.
State your name?
Sure, I'm sorry, Mike Goodwillie, Douglas County Assessor, Register of Deeds. I'm just hearing about that now. We got this resolution up for notice to go out with what we thought was ample time. But by all means, I don't think it's fair if that's all the notice that they've gotten. And I would actually recommend that you take it through to the 9th so that they get the notice that's fair.
Thank you. Teresa?
Teresa, York County Attorney's Office. From our perspective, our legal perspective, I would make a recommendation to lay over till the 9th. Salvation Army's asked for a layover anyway. The 3 entities, Goodwill, Habitat for Humanity, and Salvation Army, are similar but not identically situated, and that would tee them all up together again on the 9th. And then I would ask the board to consider from the 9th laying it over for action until May 23rd so that our office can hear the arguments on the 9th and then have opportunity to speak with this board on how those arguments interplay with the pending litigation, and then have the board act, if they so choose, on May 23rd.
Thank you. Commissioner Morgan?
I was going to mention that I supported Commissioner Kavanaugh in laying it over, but now that Teresa's given us good direction, which I always appreciate, Teresa, I think that'd be a good idea. I do tend to think Habitat for Humanity seems to be somewhat different, you know, and I'm supportive of what they have done in our community, but at the same time, you know, I respect if her wisdom tells us that we should lay them all over. I'm good with that, and if it's not harmful, that's pretty important. The other thing I just want to ask, because there's a Goodwill location right across from our office on 78th. I didn't hear you mention that address, off 78th and Dodge.
It's a lease location.
That's leased?
Mm-hmm.
But wouldn't that be one of your locations?
It is one of our locations.
Yeah,
yes.
I didn't hear it when you mentioned the locations, that's why.
Right.
I said something about that store.
On the lease property, don't you pay, on the 4 lease properties?
Yeah, on our lease properties, we pay property taxes through the lease.
Okay, I didn't know.
Yes.
Go ahead.
If I may, Commissioner, there's an item further down the food chain that relates to the business personal property for those leased locations. So that's item Item F. So if you're gonna lay D over, you probably ought to lay F over, because I think the arguments are.
I'll do what Teresa tells us. Teresa?
She's the boss.
That would, Teresa, York County Attorney's Office. For consistency, that makes sense. Okay. Please note, though, that on letter D, there is an entity that is not those three, Goodwill, Salvation Army, and Habitat. There is an additional entity that you could take action on. It is not in my recommendation for a layover.
The Omaha Small Business Network. Okay, any further questions
No.
from anyone? Anyone else in the audience like to speak on these agenda items? So what I'm hearing is that we would need a motion to lay over on item D, Goodwill, Salvation Army, and Habitat. Any further questions or comments? Please vote, and then we'll take the small network separately.
Okay, we'll get this ready for you in a second here.
1 week layover. With also the recommendation from the county attorney that it be on for further information but not action till May 23rd.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, and we're just doing item D.
D with the three.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. Please vote.
My yes vote is already recorded.
All right.
Is it recorded or not?
We will see in a second. Okay, there we go. Motion passes.
And now on item D, there is an Omaha Small Business Network, and it is the recommendation of the Assessor Register of Deeds Office to deny the permissive exemption. Is there a motion?
But I would like.
Well, we're going to lay over F.
This is the part of that. What I would like to move is passage of what's left in item D, resolution E, item F, with the exception of those items pertaining to Goodwill, Salvation Army, and Habitat for Humanity.
No, well,
Was it E or F?
there's people here to speak
All right,
on the
fine.
next one.
Then just item D, the remainder of item D.
Commissioners, I was just going to say, in the interest of fairness, if these three other organizations got notice of this hearing later than we had anticipated them getting it, I'd just as soon you lay it all over, even for the small business network too, on the chance or the likelihood that they wouldn't have gotten notice either.
Okay.
And what I don't want is for us to not give people the process they're entitled to.
Okay. Commissioner Boyle?
Well, that's what I was going to ask about too. So if we lay it over, that's fine. But I still want a lot more information about why they're on the skillet.
Okay. Commissioner Rogers?
I'm gonna have to abstain on the OSBN, but I know that they're aware of it. They're not gonna contest it because it's rental and they're in that partial, so they're not gonna contest it.
Oh, okay. So we could
that's
vote
good to
through.
go.
Okay.
But E, I would like to, because I'm gonna make a recommendation for E to give them grace because they're just late. And
Well, they're here to
yeah,
speak,
and they're
right,
here.
okay.
So, okay.
So item, the Omaha Small Business Network, what's the will of the board?
I'd like to lay that over for at least a week.
Second.
Okay. Any further questions or comments? Please vote.
Was this F?
It's still D, that small business.
All right, there we go. Motion passes.
And now we'll move to item E, which is the Malcolm X Memorial Foundation, and there is a denial because of a late filed application for the exemption of real property. Good morning.
Good morning. Mike Goodwillie, Douglas County Assessor, Register of Deeds. And it's exactly that. We sent the standard reminder letters throughout 2016. Got no application. Then I think very late in the year, there was some discussion about putting a value on the property. And I think that might have gotten the board's attention. Anyway, Mr. Luaru here and I got together and had a very nice chat. He filed his 2017 applications on time, and we've recommended granting them. The 2016 applications were about 6 months late, and that's why we're here.
Good morning.
Good morning. Again, Sharif Luwaru with Malcolm X Memorial Foundation, 3448 Evans Street. Just in terms of process in getting our tax exempt status in, we recognize that it did get in late, and so there's not a legitimate reason when there's a timeline. It needs to be turned in on time, and we did not do that. We failed in that regard. That was my responsibility as a president of the organization. We're an all-volunteer group of board members, and we handle about 17 acres of land in our facility. And over the last year, we were working and were successful at building a community-based radio station that allows our community to have a voice in terms of the programs that they would like to talk about, issues within the community, etc. It took a lot more time than I anticipated, and I was not responsive to this request. And so for that, I apologize. But I did get that submitted in. We've submitted them annually before that point, and we'll continue to be on time with submitting annually after this. And I would request that we are allowed to have that exemption for, even though they were submitted late.
Commissioner Boyle.
Mr. Goodwillie, can you tell us what dollar amount we're talking about here?
I'm sorry, I don't have that figure with me today.
Okay, well, 17 acres of, or whatever it is, a pretty unimproved territory.
It, I think, has the potential to be some kind of a park or community garden, but as yet, I don't think they've gotten as far along with that project as they'd like to. So it's pretty raw.
Well, my feeling is that this is the name that it bears is a very important name in the history of our country, and that he is an important international figure. And I think that, as I've said before, on a lot of other people who, particularly volunteer groups, who try their darndest to make things work, and they've done a good job over there making things happen. I've been there before several times for events and ribbon cuttings and all that sort of thing. I think they are entitled, because of who they are and what they are. These nonprofit organizations, particularly headed by volunteers, need to be honored, and they need to, we need to grant them the exemption that they're entitled to based under the law. And an administrative deadline, these administrative deadlines really bother me because they interfere with a very basic right, and I think it's based in the Constitution, to be a nonprofit organization and to do these things. And one of the very few benefits is that they get to do this without paying property taxes. And they're entitled to other benefits under Internal Revenue Code and so forth, but the one I'm focused on is this. And so I really feel that we need to grant this exemption. Where are they? You know, they're not a wealthy, it's not a wealthy organization. They struggle. I remember when Rowena Moore was working to put it together so many years ago, a friend of mine. And I think they're entitled to the exemption. So at the end of other discussion, if there is any other, I'll make a motion that we grant the tax exemption to the Malcolm X Foundation for the grant the organization the request they've made.
There was a motion by Commissioner Boyle, seconded by Commissioner Rogers. Commissioner Duda.
I'm getting ready to lose again. As we sit here pontificating about the law, but we have no intention of following it. We don't have the right to do this. It's not within our purview. But we're more interested in feeling good than following the law. Just like last year when we were told nobody from Goodwill is getting rich, let's go ahead and give them the exemption, and now we backed ourselves into a corner and have to defend that in court. We really I mean, I don't know why we bother hiring smart people if we refuse to listen to them. Mr. Goodwillie is one of the most knowledgeable people in the state on property tax matters. We've got a very competent attorney. But we don't want to follow their advice because that doesn't make us feel good. I'm sorry for the situation that you find yourself in, sir, but we don't have the discretion to grant what you are asking. We're going to do it anyway, and I don't know what that means legally. So,
Commissioner
thank you.
Boyle?
I'd call for the vote.
Commissioner Rogers? Okay. There is a motion and a second to grant the exemption to Malcolm X Foundation. Any further questions or comments? Please vote.
Motion passes.
Thank you for being
Thank
here
you.
today. Item F is, I need a motion to lay this item over for a week.
What is that one?
It's the one that, also, it's a personal property, but it has to do with Goodwill, Salvation Army, and Habitat.
Okay.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Rogers, seconded by Commissioner Morgan. Please vote.
1 second, please. Okay, thank you. Motion passes.
And then item G, resolutions G, H, and adjourn.
Let's see, G and H, okay.
Commissioner Rogers.
So, Mike, I'm curious, on item F, on H, what's happened with Sienna Francis' house that this car is not exempt?
I think he left.
I think because it was late.
It was, well, it's within the purchase date for this vehicle was 12/22, so it wasn't within the 30-day window for approval. So late.
Well,
It's late. Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, can that be laid over to give, I guess, Sacklaw a chance to come down? Because if it was going to hit it anyway, and I don't, let me say, I don't disagree with Claire, but I wouldn't, Commissioner Duda, but I wouldn't compare this to the Goodwill situation. It's, yeah, there's a respect for some lateness. I think there's also a degree of grace. And I'm not a legal expert, but I'm assuming there's some precedence has been set since the state hadn't revoked any of these, so they've granted them to some degree. So there's some precedence being set. So I'd ask that H be laid over to give Sacklaw a chance to come down.
Do you want to grant it?
My turn?
Uh-huh.
Well, I do like to disagree with Commissioner Duda. No, I'm joking. No, I respect him terrifically, and I don't always agree with him, but he's a good guy, good people. But on these, these things, I've questioned several times. Why are these brought to us if we can't vote one way or the other? I mean, there's kind of like just a public hearing, and we all sit here like a bunch of dopes and can't vote. I mean, I don't believe that. If we can't vote how we feel about these situations that are brought to us, then why bring them? I mean, what is the point? And I've asked the assessor, just quit bringing these things. If we don't have the authority to do something, it's kind of like the Board of Equalization, which is a terribly expensive exercise in silliness. The assessor should be valuing property and let it go, and we should be out of it. That's like these things. I mean, when some organization like Sienna House, my goodness, Sienna Francis House, I mean, aren't they entitled to drive a car with tax-exempt plates? I mean, who here would argue with that? But so they missed a deadline. They got a car at an awkward time. And what model is this anyway? I don't think it's a 2017 Jaguar, is it? What is it?
It's a Honda, 205 Honda.
A 2005 Honda van?
I don't know if it's a van. It's a Honda.
I do, because I read about it.
Okay.
I read it. I think that is, to me, it's outrageous that we can't give Sienna Francis House a tax-exempt plate for a 2005 van. I mean, it probably has maybe 10,000 miles on it. What do you think? They bought it used? Well, I'll tell you what I'd like to do, to tell you the truth. I don't know if it's going to pass or not, but I would like to make a motion to grant the Sienna House the tax-exempt status on that 2005 Honda van. And I'll make that motion.
And I'll second it.
Does that include item G?
Yes, it
Because we're
does.
approving exemptions for
Yes.
vehicles there too.
Yes.
And I would second
Teresa?
Teresa, York County Attorney's Office. With regards to item H, I simply was going to say that if the board wishes to lay it over, they certainly may. The entity that would need to possibly be here if the board has questions would be the treasurer's office. With regards to this particular item, if I remember correctly, I believe that an entity, if they purchase a new vehicle, has 30 days to apply for the exemption. And so this one, if I remember from the documentation, I believe they purchased it in December of 2016, and so the application is untimely.
Commissioner Morgan?
No, I was just going to say, with what Commissioner Boyle said about, we hear we don't have the authority, why do they continue to appear on our agenda? And I'm totally in support of the Sienna Francis House buying a 2005 Honda and giving them that exemption because of the work they do in our community that's so very, very important to us. And in the long run, saves us a lot of money because of corrections and the health center and everything else.
Okay.
So,
Commissioner Kavanaugh?
Because this issue keeps coming up, and it's always asked, do we have the authority to do this? Do we have the authority to do this? Mike Boyle's been a lawyer a lot longer than I have, but we were both taught in law school that equity seeks to do that which should be done. And we sit in equity when we pass on these questions. We could be, I suppose, a pharisaical slave to the dot and jot of words on paper, or we can use our God-given common sense and just do the right thing. And I understand Commissioner Duda's view on this, and I respect it, and he's been here a lot longer than I have, and there's good reasons for him, but I respectfully disagree, and I think that we are not doing a wrong thing when we sit and do the equitable thing, which is the right thing. And this is a long-established principle of law in the United States, that equity seeks to do that which should be done. And from what I'm hearing on these cases that we do it, there's equitable arguments to do what we're doing, and it makes a lot of sense to encourage people to do what Sienna Francis House does, which is a benefit to all of us. And if they want to, claim an exemption on a 12-year-old van that they're helping people get around town on, well, I might see some social merit in that. And so I know that this comes up again and again, and I know that Commissioner Duda has kind of a bright line on this one, but I would just appeal to him to maybe consider that we sit in equity and we're just trying to do what should be done.
Commissioner Duda?
Thank you. I'll try to be brief. We're a creature of the legislature. We don't get to make up rules as we go along. They tell us how to do what we do, how to pay for it, what the guidelines are, what the dates are. I find it very ironic that it's the two attorneys on our board that keep telling us we don't have to worry about the law. We don't have to worry about dates and regulations and all the things the legislature wrote for us. It's not equitable. So we should just do what feels good, not what the legislature told us to do and how to do it. Thank you.
With that, we do have a motion to approve the motor vehicle exemptions for G and H, and does that include adjournment with the maker of the motion and the seconder?
Yes.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Boyle, second by Commissioner Rogers. Please vote.
Motion passes.
We will now move into the agenda for the Douglas County Board of Commissioners, and if I could just take a moment to recognize the tragedy that occurred in our neighboring county of Potawatomi yesterday with the death of one of their deputies and the injury of the deputy and then the injuries of two of their citizens. It was amazing how well everyone worked together to catch the individual as quickly as they did, but not soon enough for him to take a life of one of their own. So if we could just take a moment of silence and keep our friends in our neighboring county in our prayers and thoughts. Thank you. With that, the agenda for the Douglas County Board of Commissioners, roll call, please.
Commissioner Boyle, Commissioner Kavanaugh, Commissioner Duda, Commissioner Kraft, Commissioner Morgan, Commissioner Rogers, Madam Chair.
Here. Item A, approval of the minutes of the Board of Commissioners meeting held Tuesday, April 25th, 2017, and item B, approval of claims submitted for payment processed through Tuesday, May 2nd.
So moved. Second.
Commissioner Kavanaugh?
Oh, I'll wait till later.
Oh, okay. No questions or comments, please vote.
Commissioner Kavanaugh. Motion passes.
Next is the consent agenda, items A through H. Is there a motion to approve? Motion by Commissioner Boyle, seconded by Commissioner Rogers. Commissioner Kavanaugh?
I'm going to note a couple of things here. One is an item C. It's the reappointment of Robert Lanfear, William Julian, Luke Janke to the Douglas County Planning Commission. I would be remiss if I didn't voice again my long-stated opinion that we need new blood on these commissions and that we're reappointing people who've served a very long time. Nothing against them. I actually commend their public service. But, we just had a talk with some board people here relative to best practices in the not-for-profit world. These are best practices in the government commission world. And so, again, I don't have anything against these people. I think that we should have new blood on all these commissions and that we should institute, and I'll probably bring to the board next January when we have our rules discussion, a rule to establish some reasonable term limits like are practiced in best practices across the country relative to service on these boards and commissions.
Commissioner, sorry. Go ahead.
Or if there's a discussion on this, that's fine, and then I'd like to come back for one unrelated item on
okay.
this.
Is there discussion on that item, Commissioner Duda, or is it a different
No,
one?
I have a different item.
Commissioner Boyle, was it on that item or a different one? Okay.
I just would suggest that maybe we include the terms of county commissioners. Since I'm finishing my 20th year, it's time for term limits.
Commissioner Kavanaugh.
Doesn't apply to me. I sound like Congress.
Yeah, I think PJ actually agrees with you on that, don't you?
Several years ago.
We can make the old mayor rule. I don't know. But, yes, there's one other item on a much happier note. I'm aware that yesterday was our clerk comptroller's birthday, and I'd just like to join wishing Dan Ash happy birthday, Dan.
14 years old.
I noted that he's almost old enough to qualify for the constitutional provision relative to becoming president of the United States. Almost.
I won't be doing that, but thank you. Thank you.
Commissioner Duda.
Thank you. I would like to ask if item E might be pulled so that I could abstain on that, and then I have a question on item A.
Okay, go ahead and ask for A.
I believe somebody's here from the Surfside, and I'm just curious as to why somebody with a liquor license needs a special liquor license, what the story is on this.
Good morning, Mike Walker.
Good morning.
1445 North River Drive. Yeah, that was my question too, but the Quality Brands of Omaha, our Budweiser distributorship, has required that SDL.
Oh, really?
And for the life of me, I've been talking with Ellen, and we just soon operate under the 7-day rule. We're not going to be without. We're going to operate within the bounds of our liquor license, but in order to buy and return product, Quality Brands wants us to have that SDL.
Thank you.
There is a 7-day rule that says you can buy 7 days either before or after the event. and return it, but they don't want to use that rule. They were requesting this SDL. So,
thank you for the information. I appreciate it.
Okay, so with that, is there a motion to approve
So move.
A through H?
Yeah, except
with
for-
the exception of E.
Yes, so move.
Thank you.
Commissioner Boyle had motioned originally, and Commissioner Rogers had seconded.
Okay.
So.
Oh.
But that was before the item E had been asked to
Well,
later.
we need to take C separate, so pull out C and E from that motion.
Okay.
That's good.
Okay? So this is on the consent agenda minus C and E. Please vote.
Motion passes.
Item C
Good
is
luck.
the reappointment of Robert Lampick. Thank you for being here. William Julian and Luke Jenke to the Douglas County Planning Commission. Is there a motion to approve?
So move.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Boyle, second by Commissioner Morgan. Please vote.
One moment, please. Yep. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Motion passes.
And item E is approving the special designated liquor license for Ponca Hills Volunteer Fire Department. Is there a motion to approve?
Well, let's see, I don't know.
Motion by Commissioner Morgan.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner.
Now you owe me, Commissioner David. Of course, I haven't voted yet.
Please vote.
One moment, please. Okay, thank you.
We should all abstain.
Motion passes.
With that, we do have some recognition and proclamations that for our county employees that are retiring but are not with us today. But Doug Greiser, who is retiring from the Douglas County District Court after 32 years. Roger Rowe, retiring from the Douglas County Youth Center after 27 years. And Julian Vesper, retiring from the Douglas County Health Center after 19 years. So we wish them all well on their retirement and thank them for their dedicated service to the citizens of Douglas County. Is there a motion to approve these recognitions?
So move.
Motion by Commissioner Boyle, seconded by Commissioner Kavanaugh. Please vote.
Motion passes.
Next are citizen comments. Is there anyone in the chamber wishing to speak to the Board of Commissioners about an item not on the agenda? Seeing none, we will move to the finance. It's the budget report as presented, unless there's questions or comments. Administrative services, there's a resolution to consolidate the Douglas County Records Imaging Department into the Public Properties Department. Is there a motion to approve?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Kavanaugh, seconded by Commissioner Boyle. Any questions or comments? Please vote.
Motion passes.
Commissioner Kavanaugh.
I just wanted to note one thing. This is what we just did is a good forward-looking use of our ability to consolidate activities within Douglas County's departments. And I want to commend everybody for getting on board on this. This, I think, will be a good step forward in streamlining county administration and eliminating 2 offices and combining them into one under the very competent leadership of Public Property and Jerry Leahy will be a good thing going forward. And I appreciate everybody's support on this. Thank you.
And it does, for Commissioner Duda's, it does follow our strategic planning ideas.
That's exactly right.
Ha ha.
You had me till then. That's why I waited until after the vote to commend our heads-up strategic plan. Very good.
Next is the Child and Youth Services, the Douglas County Youth Center report, and Commissioner Rogers, as chair of that, did you want to introduce this item?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to lay the stage with this. Last week, we saw the DMC numbers that talk to a bigger part of the system. A lot of the foundation where most people look for DMC is here. Now, I want to note, in looking at the presentation before this, it's a little beefy, but my hope is this is response to Commissioner Boyle's request to have something similar to the corrections report.
Thank you.
And I would just say to the group as a whole to provide some feedback, because I would hope that the presentations won't be like this thick every month. But it's a good foundation to start everybody. And I think from there, just feedback across to the numbers that you want to see and where. Brad, you know, because Claire. Okay. And so this is a work in progress, so we invite any input to have it constantly tweaked. And I want to note that, so again, you saw the DMC report, you will see this, and my hope is that some regular information that is distributed to the JDAI stakeholder group and the OYS group will then flow to you like a data memo that talks about the population and things of that sort. So with that, I'll turn it over to Brad more.
Commissioner Boyle, did you want to say anything?
I just want to thank Commissioner Rogers and the folks at the Youth Center. The Youth Center is an incredibly important part of county government. There are a lot of important operations, but this one dealing with juveniles in custody and so forth simply is, is incredibly important. We have a chance to interrupt their activity, and I can't tell you enough how much I appreciate your bringing this.
No, that's it.
People in the community will be able to see this as well and understand what's going on out there, so thank you.
And I, too, just want to add that before Brad starts, Commissioner Rogers, that for being able to present to the citizens, even if it is a small piece that watch us, but now that it's going to be on for people to go and look up, to see the details of this, because I can tell you when I go to speak to citizen groups, both the Youth Center and Adult Corrections are two of the very components that are talked about the most, and they want more details of it, and so I think this is a very good thing, so I appreciate you bringing it forward. And Brad, go ahead. We'll ask questions after you're all done. With
feel
your
free to interrupt as well.
Well, no, we'll wait till the end gets too unwieldy if we interrupt. So just go through and then we'll ask questions.
Yes, I am Brad Alexander. I am the superintendent of the Douglas County Youth Center, and I appreciate this opportunity to share with you some of the things that we have going on at the Youth Center. It's the first time that I presented this kind of a report, so echo Commissioner Rogers' sentiment that it might be a little bit lengthy. I was rehearsing last night and woke up this morning and actually pulled a couple slides out, trying to reduce that. But go back to the recognitions just real quick. Yes, Roger Rowe. He was really incredible. 40+ years of being an educator. 27 years with the Douglas County Youth Center, and he slipped off to Colorado because we wanted him in front of you all. But yeah. Yeah, but he just always amazed me because he brought a level of energy and excitement and passion to the job, every bit as much on his 27th year as he did in his first, and that was something that I always admired about Roger, and he certainly will be missed. But gentleman right over here in the white, Dave Collins is the person that has been selected to replace Tim and to lead our education department, and I believe he's going to take what Roger and Mark and some others have done and bring that to a whole nother level. Also with me is Mark LaFleur. He's our administrative manager. Renee Iwan, she runs the home program, and back there is Rondi Woodard. He is our detention manager. So that is my support. So let's get started with this. You probably recognize some of the murals on the slide, don't you?
Yeah.
I still enjoy seeing those when I show up to work each day. This is our mission. we are there to provide for the safety of the community, and ultimately we want to provide a structured, safe, educational opportunity for all of the kids that come into the youth center. This is going to be for a culturally diverse population, which is what we represent at the Douglas County Youth Center. We had a pretty good year last year in 2016. We were selected, every year the Nebraska Jail Standard selects a facility to be awarded the Excellence in Detention Facility Operations. There's 76 facilities in the state that are considered for this award. We were selected in 2016, and I think that's a great recognition of the people that you all have working at the Douglas County Youth Center and the work that they do every day. And we were the first juvenile detention facility to ever receive that award, so it was quite the honor. Every Saturday we have Girl Scouts that show up to the youth center, and they work with our young girls. The program is referred to as Girltopia, and the whole idea is to get them involved in entrepreneurial ideas, leadership, build self-esteem, and turns out they like us because they gave us an award in 2016, the Spirit of the Girl Scout Award. 2015, one of our online credit recovery programs is PASS. That stands for Portable Assisted Study Sequence. They conducted a survey. It's a nationwide program. And they conducted a survey of all of the sites throughout the country. And well, lo and behold, it turned out that the Douglas County Youth Center kids were earning credits at a higher rate than any of the other sites in the country. So certainly a recognition for the people that are helping to educate the kids and the kids that are actually putting in the work to earn those credits.
Very good.
The first part of the presentation has to do with programming, some of the things that we do with young people. And since I haven't done this before, the second part is some data. And what I chose to do was use kind of a 10-year, so you can see kind of a trend line where we've been and where we are now. So start off with the programming. We have a programming called Do Justice. And this is a partnership between Creighton and UNMC. So we have medical students that come up and spend time with the young people. And they talk to them about appropriate relationships. They talk to them about sexually transmitted disease and the role of parenting. A good number of our kids, they all get tested for STDs, and a good number of them, last year it was close to 20% actually tested positive for STDs. So we appreciate the help of Creighton and UNMC. We have a lady by the name of Sue Mikowski that comes up every Thursday and spends time with our young girls. Unfortunately, a lot of our kids have experienced some level of domestic violence. And the odd thing, I think, maybe, is that some of these girls and boys don't always recognize that they've been involved in these situations. It almost becomes their normal to an extent. And so this is a wonderful opportunity for them to understand how it is that they should and actually deserve to be treated. And when they're not treated that way, where they might go for some help and just a better understanding of domestic violence in general and to help them moving forward. We have a read-write program. So every kid that comes into the youth center is assessed for reading and math comprehension, and that happens very quickly. Some of the kids, a number of our kids actually are not reading at the level that you would hope that they would be, and so it's an opportunity to identify those kids and to get them enrolled in the read-write program. And the lady that runs our library runs the read-write program. Title I funds the thing, and with her instruction, one-on-one, our kids are actually increasing one grade level if they're involved in the program for 30 days, which is, I think, pretty impressive. And there's been some state testing that show that our kids are advancing their reading levels faster than any other school district in the state, which is a credit to, again, those kids and the people that are working with them. We have a school liaison that gathers transcripts from their home schools, puts together an academic advancement plan. A lot of these kids don't really know where they're at academically and what they have to accomplish to earn their high school diploma. And so we prepare an academic advancement plan. The kids take that with them, and it's really a roadmap as to where they're at now and how they get to where they want to be, and that's walking with their class on graduation day. We have a career center. This is an opportunity, I think, for young people to kind of envision a future that they may not have considered for themselves. Maybe a job, maybe it involves college, whatever the case may be. They identify where their interests lie, what it is that they might want to do someday, and then they actually lay out a plan for them to show them how they can accomplish that goal. And along with this, we have guest speakers that come into the youth center and spend time with the kids. Community agencies come in and share their programming and the things that they might be able to do to help the kids. So it's a good program. And excuse me, I got some allergies going on here. But, Metro Community College has really proven to be a wonderful partner. On occasion, we have kids that we work with. Juvenile court holds jurisdiction on these kids until their 19th birthday. So there are occasions where we're working with kids that have actually already graduated from high school, and there are some that have an interest in continuing their education. Metro Community College waives the tuition and all of the expenses and allows them to enroll through the youth center with an online program. And when they do that, they may get released during the course of their class, and they're allowed to complete that class even after they've been released. So we appreciate Metro Community College. Edmentum is the Omaha Public Schools online learning program. Title I, again, funds this completely, and it's an opportunity for us to, our goal is that the kids leave as good, if not, and our hope is that they're actually better when they walk out the door. This program started in 2011, and I'll show you a screen here in just a little bit, but the credits earned by our kids at the youth center went up about 60% when this program was implemented back in 2011. One of the few facilities in the country that actually do parent-teacher conferences, and I think Mark brought this to me, and I think it's fantastic. So we have a family engagement liaison that actually reaches out to families that have actually, maybe in some cases, have never been engaged in their child's education, or were and have kind of fallen off a little bit. So this person calls, and the whole purpose for the phone call, of course, is to make them aware of the parent-teacher conference, but also to make them comfortable with the process. We don't want them to feel intimidated or nervous about coming up. We want them to be a part of that. And family participation has grown every year since we've started this. And 18 families actually showed up last February to participate. So that was really, really good. And our hope, of course, is this process won't just be at the youth center, but these families will become comfortable being involved in their child's education moving forward. So when the child goes to their home school, that they will continue to be involved in these sort of programs. We've known for a long time that a good number of our kids do not receive any sort of visitation while they're at the youth center, and that's concerning. And so we started in 2012. We looked at what does the future look like for those kids that aren't receiving any sort of family visitation. And it was a labor-intensive process, but we took it on, and what we found was 68% of the youth who did not receive visits within the first 30 days while they were at the youth center would return to the youth center within 6 months of their release. Overall, our recidivism is roughly about 60%, but when we run that number, that takes them all the way through juvenile court jurisdiction. And so to shorten that window to 6 months, you would expect that number to be a lot lower, and in this case, it's actually higher. So, what do you do with that information? And we chose to reach out to the families and try to get an understanding, well, actually help them to understand the opportunities that are available to their children while they're at the youth center. And of course, a part of that conversation is visitation. And we asked them, are you going to be able to visit their child while they're at the youth center? And if the answer is no, is there anything that we can do to make that happen, to help you? And oftentimes it's simply, we have a schedule for visitation. It doesn't always work with their schedule. They have jobs, they have responsibilities. And under no circumstances are we going to be an obstacle to a family that wants to come up and visit their children. So Rondi back there is working with families, if not daily, several times a week, to arrange what we refer to as special visits to make sure that we accommodate those families that want to come up and visit. Sherwood helped us to get a liaison hired in 2014 to kind of facilitate this process, and it was amazing. Family visitation increased by 41% in 2015 following the implementation of that program. We do adopt a unit. It's a community engagement program. So community partners come up to the youth center. They bring pizza or soda and actually have an opportunity to sit down and visit with the young people, meet them, encourage them. It's a positive reinforcement program. They're encouraging the kids to continue to stay involved in school, to earn credits, to maintain proper behavior while they're in the classroom. And I got a list, if you'll just bear with me. That's Green Chan. Just to acknowledge some of these people. Release Ministries provides our chaplain at the youth center and faith-based program. They've been fantastic in this regard. OPD's gang unit, Compassion in Action, the D2 Center, Hope Center, Ministers' Wives Group, .com, the Urban League, Reconnect Inc., and a lady by the name of Nancy King has been very helpful in organizing this as well. So I wanted to recognize them. When we do this monthly, Greg Hepburn continues to provide the Pledge for Peace. It's an opportunity for young people to actually verbalize their interest in peaceful resolutions to situations and to try to not be involved in violent activity. I'm hoping that when they verbalize and hear themselves saying these things, that maybe for some of them that will make a difference. We had 7 nationally known authors spend time with our young people over the last few years at the Youth Center, which is tremendous. A number of them have similar life experiences to what our kids are. Oh, thank you. Excuse me.
You do have a good assistant.
Thank you. Sorry about this. But a number of these authors have had similar experiences, so it's kind of nice when the young people actually get an opportunity to talk to somebody that's achieved a level of notoriety and success and share their stories, and because it really boils down to it's not where you're at now. That does not determine where you're going to end up, and that's a nice message that these authors share with our young people. You're familiar, I think, with the Barnes & Noble Book Fair, and so a couple times a year they do a book fair. They donate 15% of their sales to the Youth Center. The last one was in December. I know we received over $1,300. Great opportunity for us to purchase some new books, and we've gotten online or on board with the e-readers, and so the kids are having access to those. And so I guess a marketing plug, this Saturday we'll be back at Barnes & Noble for another book fair. You don't have to be present. If you choose to shop online, there is the ID code 120-98422. And you enter that code, and your purchase, 15% of the purchase, will be donated to the Douglas County Youth Center.
Is there more than one Barnes & Noble?
It doesn't matter where you go.
Excuse me, being very technical, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but if you want to do this online, do you go to barnesandnoble.com and
Yes,
then
sir.
that book fair will show up or something?
Yep, there will be there's just a code right there, an opportunity to enter the code when you submit your purchase.
Thank you.
And if you're going to the actual store, all you have to do, if you're going to the actual Barnes & Noble store, when you check out, just say, I support DCYC or I support the Youth Center, and they will make sure that we get that on the ring up.
Great, that's a great idea. Thank you.
Release Ministries has been with us for 23 years. They got there a couple years before I did. And they're just a fantastic organization. They do mentoring. They have homes in the community for young people. Just a wonderful, wonderful group of people. They provide, it had been historically one full-time chaplain and more recently 1.5. They do Bible studies. They've got, I think, 42 right now volunteers that are actively working with our young people. They come up and they do prayer walks and spend time with the kids, and they bring in guest speakers. They help us with our Christmas programming and other programs throughout the course of the year. So, wonderful, wonderful organization. Like it says up there, 90% of the addictions, substance abuse or alcoholism, start in your teenage years. That's not something that we will ignore, so we do have a licensed alcohol and drug counselor that spends time with our young people and provides education in that regard. That's at the youth center, and it's at our evening reporting center, which I'll get to in just a minute, but EPIC. Every Tuesday there's a group of people that get together at the youth center, and not unfrequent, I was going to say often, but it's not rare that we have young people that have an order to be released and they remain at the youth center because they're waiting for a bed to open up somewhere. And so this group, Douglas County Youth Center Mental Health Education, Medical Transition Specialist, Special Ed Teacher, Nebraska Families Collaborative, Public Defender and Probation, they all sit down and they look at that group of people that have release orders and look for opportunities where they have some control over something that may allow the young person to move on quicker. And they also have an opportunity, that's a pretty diverse group, so they have an opportunity to sit down and kind of brainstorm the kids that happen to be dealing with a mental health crisis while they're at the youth center. So you have all of these people coming from different places, and they're sharing ideas, and ultimately they're hoping to walk out of the room with a better idea of how to best help the young people that we're working with. The home program, I think you're familiar with this. It started in 1999. Renee has escaped, but she runs that program. Really a good program. You know, it's I say there that it's not only fiscally responsible, but I think it's the right thing to do for kids that meet that classification. You know, they're allowed to. The GPS provides just amazing level of accountability, and the kids are at home. They're going to their school. Some of them work. Some of them are involved in extracurricular activities through their school, and so all of these positive things that are going on in their lives are allowed to continue. We also work with diversion for truants, and we are not often as we'd like to be, but used as a graduated sanction out of the Juvenile Assessment Center. EPIC, that's Encouraging Positive Intelligent Choices. That's the evening reporting center that Sherwood funds. So we partnered with Blackburn High School and Boys and Girls Club. All of our kids become members of the Boys and Girls Club. We pick them up. The transportation is provided to get them there, taking them home. So 3 to 8 in the afternoon or early evening is a kind of a critical time for young people. And so this is an opportunity for them to go somewhere that's safe. They're going to receive some tutoring, some education, some counseling, and a variety of other programming to help them. And we're piloting a day reporting center now. We've got 3 kids currently involved in that. It will just go through the end of the school year. Hopefully it'll continue next year, but we're doing it now, and then we're going to tweak it over the summer and hopefully fire it back up next school year. But this is an opportunity for some kids to do something constructive in lieu of being on a school suspension. And that's kind of the list of, I don't think it's a complete list, but it's pretty close, of the activities and opportunities available to the kids while they're at that program. So here are the graphs, the statistics, and I think some of them kind of tell a little bit of a story, and I can kind of point to some of the things where you see some drops. I think on this one, what I'd like to point out is if you look at the green bar, 2010 to 2011, you see a nice little drop there. In 2010, probation actually decided to start reviewing youth that were on picked up for a failure to appear warrant. Historically, they would automatically come into the youth center. And in 2010, probation brought them in, and it was a part of their intake process. So rather than automatically going to the youth center, they would be given a new court date and sent home. And so I think that might explain some of that dip there. And then in 2013 is when state law restricted status offenders from entering a secure detention. So you see a significant drop there as well. When the status offenders were restricted from coming into secure detention, we opened our staff secure unit, I think the end of 2012. And so those are the numbers that relate to our staff secure unit. When you see terms like adjudicate and pre-adjudicate, you know that those kids are involved in juvenile court. And when you see terms like pretrial and sentenced, you know that those kids are involved in adult court. So again here, you see the dip from 2012 to 2013 when the status offenders were removed from secure detention. The other thing I'd want to point out here on this screen is in 2014, LB 464 passed. And that kept some kids out of adult court and required that they start in juvenile court. So all misdemeanors, Class 3, Class 3A felonies, and Class 4 felonies all had to start in juvenile court. So you see that happening here. If you look at the line that shows pre-adjudicated, you can see in 2014 that number goes up, actually to the point where 522, that's the highest number we'd seen in the 10 years that I'm showing here. But by the same token, the numbers for the pretrial, the kids that are in adult court, you can see that dropping off significantly. And that is a result of LB 464. And that's kind of what our population looked like in 2016. Most of our kids are pre-adjudicated. I would say all of the kids in the blue there that are adjudicated, they are all, trying to think of an exception, but I can't come up with one, are involved in probation. So delinquent in status, those are kids that are in juvenile court. Misdemeanors, felonies, those are kids that are in adult court. You can see where the status offenders actually go away. This all applies to secure detention. So in 2013, going forward, there were no status offenders in secure detention. Again, you see the increase in delinquents following 2014 and LB 464, and the decrease in misdemeanors and felonies as a result of LB 464. The majority of kids in staff secure are status offenders, which is what you would expect. There are some, last few years it's been mid to high 50s, that delinquents. Now delinquency is a juvenile justice term. If they were an adult, you would call them maybe a criminal, but we use different terminology. So about mid-50s, they're ordered into staff secure, and the courts can certainly do that. So prior to 2014, about a fourth of our kids were in adult court. As a result of LB 464, it's now down to about 10% of our youth are in adult court. This one, admissions versus releases, you would like to see that the blue column higher than the red column, and unfortunately I think there's only 4 out of the 10 years where that actually happens. When the releases are, when the kids are leaving faster than they're coming in, our population's going down. We don't always get to see that. Admissions by race, and I know Levon spoke to you last week. Mark co-chairs the DMC committee with Levon. And so these are the numbers that we've seen over the last 10 years. But these are raw numbers, and they do not tell the story. I think if you were to look at African American, you see 910 in 2007, 536 in 2016. It would appear that we might be making progress, but the percentage tells a different story. 52% of our admissions in 2007 were African American. 53% of our admissions in 2016 were African American. Caucasian, 39% in 2007, 28%, dropped to 28% in 2016. Hispanic, Mexican, 8% in 2007, increasing to 16% in 2016. And Native American went from 1% in 2007 to 2% in 2016. And so that's what we looked like in 2016. Staff secure admissions, we broke those down by gender even, and once again the raw numbers don't really tell the story. 44% of the girls that entered staff secure were African American in 2013. That's the year that we actually started staff secure, and that went to 46% in 2016. Caucasian dropped from 33% to 28%. Hispanic/Mexican dropped from 19% to 16%, and Native American went from 2% to 9%. Males, African Americans went from 37 to 42, Caucasian 30 to 36, Hispanic Mexicans 27 dropped to 19, and Native American dropped from 5 to 1. Asians remained the same at 2%. And that kind of shows, I think some of the themes that come out of these slides become, I'm sorry if they become a little bit redundant. I'll try and clean that up for you. But again, you see where the drop in 2013 and then the increase following 2014 in juvenile court, and then the significant reduction in the adult system, once again resulting from 464. Academic credits earned. So you can see 2011, I mentioned that online program that started then. A tremendous increase in the credits earned resulting from that program. The red, you see partial credits. That's important to us because our kids don't always stay there that long, and we want them to feel like they accomplished something even the relatively short amount of time that they were there. And so we were able to award partial credits, and the school district would receive those. They started to kind of shy away from that. Mark is relentless and kept asking, please, 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 because you see that red line going from 2012 down to 2016, a significant decrease in the partial credits earned, and we're happy to report that he's been successful, and they are going to again start accepting the partial credits beginning with the next school year, so I'm anticipating that number coming back up next year, which is good for our kids. Oh, I can't go back, can I? Yeah. Individual education plans as special ed. A good number of our kids are involved in these. So parents can request that their child be assessed and participate in this program. There's also another mechanism that allows teachers and counselors to refer young people to this program. Ultimately, the families have to agree to it, and once it's agreed to, then it becomes law, and the teachers have to comply with that plan. One of the things that became concerning to us was we felt like we were seeing some of the same faces coming back time and time again. And so we looked at the recidivism for those young people that are involved in, that have the IEPs. And sure enough, in 2014, 69% returned to us. In 2015, 73% returned. And in 2016, 76% returned. Wow. Yeah. So we've got special education teachers. They actually just agreed to increase those hours, and so hopefully we'll be doing more with those young people. Graduates, I think the story here is in 2012, the GED rules changed, and all of a sudden you had to be 18 years old to participate in a GED program, and the 5 subject areas had to be taken at the same time. So for us, that rules a good number of our kids out. So you see the red bar, the GED, drop off significantly. There's still, once again, juvenile court has jurisdiction until their 19th birthday, so if a young person is involved in that program, we'll certainly do what we can to help them to complete that. And then you can see that our education department clearly dropped the ball from 2015 to 2016. We had 20 graduates in 2015 and only 7 in 2016. I think that probably had something to do with Roe walking out the door, and but that doesn't really tell the story. The number of credits earned by the kids actually remains very similar. It's just one of those situations when things are right and the kids are getting close to graduating, and we're able to help them to finish out, then they graduate with their home school, or at least they get a diploma from their home school. Medical, the blue is the pediatrician or practitioner's contacts. The red is the mental health contacts. 2011 to 2012 is when we added 2 LMHPs, and that the number of contacts rose obviously significantly. The interesting thing here is that it was about 2012, 2013 where we closed our restrictive housing unit. I'm not saying that it's completely because of this, but I do believe it certainly had a very, very good impact in terms of the behavior of the young people at the youth center. 1 out of 4 of the kids that come to us and they're on a psychotropic medication when they arrive at our door. So we have the contracted psychologists and licensed mental health practitioners that are there to work with the kids. We do behavioral and suicide watches and assessments that are monitored by these folks, the mental health professionals, and thanks to Region 6, because it's all paid for by them, and the services are provided by Heartland Family Services. One thing that's not on the screen, just right now as we sit here, we have more kids on suicide watch and behavior watches than we've ever had, proportionally. And so it's something that we're monitoring closely and is certainly concerning to us. The kids that come in, almost all, not all, but almost all, some leave really quickly, but most of them receive STD testing. And you can see the red line shows the number of kids that test positive, and in 2016 it was close to 20% testing positive. Once again, I think that Due Justice program that I mentioned earlier with Creighton and UNMC, I think that's a wonderful asset for these young people. And of course the good thing is that they begin treatment immediately, which may not have happened if we weren't taking this step. So thanks to our medical department. Thank you for hanging in there.
That was excellent. Commissioner Rogers?
Like I said, when I saw it, it made me a little beefy, but I think everybody needed it to kind of set a tone for what'll come in the future. And the one thing I wanted to know, the IEP numbers that Brad tied to some special education stuff. I want to note that definitely that was brought up at a data committee for JDAI, and I think it's something to be alarmed, but it's something to be alarmed, and at the same time, by being alarmed to it, it's probably a little more dig that needs to go in there. So I just want to just note that for everybody. The recidivism rate is some alarming piece, but there's a certain stereotype that you don't want to put out there with the special education piece. So I just warn that it's alarming, but stay guarded, I guess, in what assumption comes to it. And the other piece too, when Brad brought up that mental health number, as this becomes more regular, this data memo that will be brought in, and then I ask somebody to explain to you as a set. There's a good, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's a large number of kids sitting there that are waiting for evaluations. And if we could find, get the evaluation set and then placement, that would help reduce those numbers down another amount too. So that's another tie to whatever resources are available outside, and the speedy evaluation is an issue that probably needs to be talked about in that respect, which I hope will pan itself out as you all get more comfortable with seeing this and be able to ask more questions, just like we asked at the adult meeting. And the other piece too is, just note too, the DMC number has a lot of other things tied to it, which as we go, I hope you'll see that I think the detention, the number 10 in detention is an end result. The precursor could be case processing, which is another committee that hopefully fleshes out. Also another piece is, how they're coming in and services that may be on the outside. So just know when you look at the DMC number resulting there are a whole lot of other touch points that lead there that make and prevent that number. So I just put that out there. But like I said, it may have been beefy, but it was a needed foundation to not only balance the good things, but the challenges that may be there. But I think there's a lot of opportunity that if we dig in, we can get at. So I want to thank everybody for the presentation and look forward. And I don't know if the board wants this right now. This is the first Tuesday of the month. The corrections happens on the 2nd, so the board we can talk about what date they want that to be to fit. But I'm fine with leaving it here or moving it to another point.
Or quarterly.
No, we like seeing you more often. Commissioner Kavanaugh.
Annually.
Thank you. And thanks for this report. This is
absolutely.
very
Appreciate your
informative.
time.
I have
Thank
a
you
couple questions for you.
Oh, yeah.
Did I hear you right that there's a 60% recidivism rate?
Yep, it's over, 60%, over 60%.
60,
60, yes.
Okay. And has that varied over time? I know that you look back 10 years on a lot of these, but I didn't see a look back on
No, I think honestly, I think it's remained fairly flat, and I know that's not encouraging. The reality is, and we don't have any control over who comes or how long they stay. I mean, none. But I hope that you see that we try to do what we can with them while.
Well, and I do see that, and in light of the fact that I think you said that the recidivism among youth who are not visited is like 68%.
Mm-hmm.
And so the addition of that outreach person to kind of get the family involved has, a good effect.
We're hoping that it's going to have a positive effect.
So that's,
yes. Absolutely.
That's good news. Page 28, race disparity is marked. I mean, we lived in a community that is majority, and we have a youth center that is majority, minority. And I think that's on 28 and 29 and thereafter. And if anything, I mean, the populations are declining, but the disparity is not.
Correct.
How do you account for that?
It's a very complex issue, and I will speak for myself. I do not believe that this is something that the juvenile justice and/or criminal justice systems are going to solve by themselves. It's a societal issue, and there's so many pieces to this. And we started with Judge Thomas was our first DMC coordinator, and I followed, and then Mark and Levon are now, and it's just. I think we all recognize that, and that's not to say that we should not do what we can, and I think that's where the family engagement piece is really critical. I recall when Judge Thomas, we were struggling with high numbers of failure to appears for the Hispanic population, and what we learned was that was a fairly, in some cases, transient population, and the courts admitted that they weren't doing a good job of keeping current addresses, and so they made some changes up in court to ensure that they did have current addresses, and they were getting information to the young people where they live. And all of a sudden you see the failure to appear numbers drop. So that had a positive impact on DMC issues. I mean, those the things like that you can kind of get your hands around, but I wonder sometimes if you look in terms of poverty levels and put that up against these and how close that they are going to match up. I personally have never done that, but are they pretty similar? Yeah. So it's so much larger than us, and it's frustrating, to be honest with you, at times.
Sure. We have a similar disparity, it appears, in STDs. I mean, we've heard information from our health department that shows, similar way out of whack from the demographics of our community to people that are presenting with positive tests for STDs. And I note in here, I think we're at page 38, where although the populations have fluctuated and actually come way down since 2008, the positive tests have, as a percentage of that population, doubled. Were we not testing 10 years ago like we're testing today, or what?
I think it started about 10 years ago is when it started.
It shows tests back to 2007.
Yeah, but you can see the increase between 2007 and 2008. I want to say 2007 is when we started, and it wasn't all of 2007, and it wasn't everyone. And then it was 2008 when we really fired it up.
So in 2008 to now, we have tests in a similar fashion. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And still,
the percentage of positive tests to the overall population as a percentage has
Increased.
doubled. I mean, there were 1,420 of those admissions in '08. Am I reading that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And 125 test positive. So, 8-9%. That's in '08. In '16, there are 547, less than half the number of admissions, and 117 test positive, which is like 20%. How do we, what's your read on that?
I think that as we started to screen some kids out of detention, we're dealing with kids that have longer involvement in the system. I hate to use the term higher risk population, but I guess I will here. And they've been involved in, I think, riskier behaviors for a period of time. But yeah, we see the same thing.
So there seem to be a number of vectors, and it's kind of like trying to figure out what the mixture is here. And family involvement.
Yes.
Poverty.
Yes.
Risky behaviors.
Sure.
And that includes not only these behaviors, but the drug and alcohol use, and race are all, would you agree with that, are all factors here?
Yes, I would. And you can find studies that'll tell you all sorts of different things. And I remember reading one, and it was the number one factor that correlated with, actually there was two. One of them was truancy rates correlated with delinquent behavior. So you can see we put a tremendous emphasis on our education. And the other one was unstructured free time when they are at home, unsupervised. And there was a high correlation that the more time they were left alone, unsupervised, the greater likelihood that they were to be involved in delinquent behavior.
The last thing I'd ask you about is, this is page 37 on mental health. 25% of the youth are in the youth center are prescribed psychotropic medication. And on the previous page, it shows kind of a, I don't know how you would classify this, but from '07 to '16, a significant rise in mental health crisis intervention. Have we been doing something different? I mean, those numbers really go up. It looks like about 2012, 13, 14, 15, and 16 are really significant.
Yeah, and it's we changed, the kids didn't. We actually we had a part-time psychologist up until that point, and then we got approval through Region 6 for funding of 2 LMHPs, which we desperately needed. Yeah. And so that's when you see that red column going up immediately because of the number of contacts, which is a good thing, the number of contacts that we had with the young people that really needed some help. And we started seeing them when they came back from court. Could be a very traumatic event. They're kids that aren't seeing visits, they're expecting a visit, it doesn't show up. They're young people, they find out through the grapevine that their girlfriend or boyfriend had just left them, and of course that's, not going to minimize that because they're there and it's a difficult situation, but it feels like the end of the world, and all of a sudden you have somebody that can help them work through. We have people working on the units with the kids, so they are able to identify these changes in behaviors, and if they can't help them, they certainly know how to get a hold of somebody that can. And so all of those things, in my opinion, that red line going up is a real positive thing.
So this 25% of youth in the youth center on prescription psychotropic medication now, is that a constant number, or have we?
That's been very, very steady. I mean, they're showing up to us, and as we're going through their medical and mental health history, yeah, they're coming into the youth center already prescribed a psychotropic medication.
So if we were to do one of these look-backs relative to that in our population, would we see an increase of 25% over that period of time of 10 years, or a stable kind of 25% is what we get?
Mark and I were just discussing that in preparation for this presentation. I think it's been fairly steady.
Thank you very much. I appreciate this report,
and
I appreciate the good work that you do. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Commissioner Duda?
I'll be brief because you just answered the question I had on the psychotropic medication. So I'll just say this is great. You guys do such good work. You know, detention centers at all levels, no news is good news usually, you know, unless you hear, a tragedy like in Pot County yesterday, something bad happening in, Nebraska's prisons, certainly we don't hear much good news coming out of there. You guys are just quietly and efficiently doing good work behind these walls, and this is great to bring out and share with us the good work that you are doing. I very much appreciate you and your staff, the great work you do, Commissioner Rogers, the guidance. I appreciate the community support through things like the Sherwood Foundation that I think are being very helpful in helping us to address some very serious problems. You guys are doing an awesome job. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Commissioner Boyle.
Well, the commissioners who spoke really hit the nail on the head, and I can't thank you enough for being here. It's something I've always been concerned about, is that we don't hear from you directly, and this today was an opportunity. Your presentation was excellent, and I do have to remark that the slides were readable, which is really important because there are people at home who try to read these things, follow them, so it's really important to get and you really got a great message across.
Leah Baez helped with that.
Who's that?
Leah Baez helped with that.
Okay, good deal. Well, that's good to hear. That's one of the things I want her to do. That's great. One of the things that I'm concerned about, and I've begun to follow, we had a meeting in California of NACO, and several of the sessions that I attended dealt with trauma and the lasting effect that trauma can have on a person. It was really interesting. I met Robert Redford's son, Jamie, who he spoke to me about my life was saved in Nebraska because he had a liver transplant at UNMC. And so we visited, and he has a film that was on resiliency. It was what it called, Resilience. And they had brought in young people who suffered trauma. They were present when their mother was beaten up. They were present when their brother was shot, killed, a neighbor was raped, all these things going on, and violence around them that left them with a terrible mental illness because of it. And the effects of trauma are so terrible. We do have some agencies in Omaha that are working to try to deal with trauma, because I think it's a lasting image that just sets a mindset and damages people terribly. And I don't know what we can do. I'd certainly be interested in trying to help you, and I think the county board would as well, to try to figure out what we can do to get into some of these things that happen that cause trauma. The interesting thing of this Redford film that he did was that the mothers were bringing in the children who were victims of trauma, and the mothers themselves were victims as well. And they began to respond to the treatment. So I sure would like to see if we can, I know there's a shortage of psychiatrists and all sorts of healthcare people that deal with this, but I'd like to see us really get down to business, not only in your facility, particularly your facility, but even the correction facility as well, because I hope it's not too late over there, and it may be too late with you. I mean, those things are damaging. So whatever you can do with trauma, and if you have, I'd like to hear about it. But today was an excellent presentation. I appreciate your being here, Commissioner Rogers. I appreciate his support and leadership. I think I couldn't agree more with Commissioner Duda about this really clicking, and Commissioner Cavanaugh as well. You're just doing a terrific job.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Commissioner
To your point, real quick, many of the kids come in with trauma, and the symptoms are very much similar to PTSD.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so that's the work that some of our mental health people are doing with those young people.
Good. Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Rogers.
I'd like to work my way up from some good points that Commissioner Cavanaugh made, and one is the psychotropic meds. I think there's a point in the future after the board here's more of these reports to also bring Dr. Poor back in, and I think there's a possibility to cross that with the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, the YRBS. There's some things that pop in there that you may be able to make some slight correlations with, but also, I think we're there on the rule that when a kid, I think it's an adult rule too, but for youth, it's suspend and not cut off is the Medicaid piece.
Yeah, continuity of care.
That piece, that I don't know how much that plays back into the recidivism. That's probably a topic worth discussion because the kid gets suspended, but they got to go back out and re-engage the medical coverage. And the point that was made about the DMC piece, there are some slides, and GIS is going to re-engage those for us. They were doing a monthly, where you overlay census tract poverty numbers with the kids that come in there quarterly, and there's a hard correlation that you can have there. And I'm assuming you could tie the poverty numbers to Medicaid and other things like that. And the other piece too, I just like to note with the DMC effort, again, to go back to Ms. Dennis's presentation, matter of fact, 10 years ago, when we got to this point for the heart, before I was on, the board had some efforts, and then the JAG started, and then within the last 10 years, the board kind of heightened and doubled down on its commitment to the whole reform piece through JDAI and the OIS piece. Well, that political will is now showing itself through DMC, and the DMC alarming numbers are exact result of actions taken by the board to bring the numbers down. And now that's that, a lot of times this is not new. I mean, as Brad said, Judge Thomas was there. A lot of people were there in some respects. And I think to questions that Commissioner Kavanaugh posed last week, the political will has aligned itself now. And my hope is that within the next 4 years, there's a big, hard dig in trying to get there. And as the board gets more educated with this, I think there'll be opportunities to move. And I just ask everybody to be alert with that. And with that, my last words is I'd definitely like to thank Brad and the staff again, but also thank them too, just over this journey of the last 10 years. So the last 3 years, they really engaged in a higher effort of identification and digging, and I want to thank the staff personally for that. So thank you.
On the mapping part of it, one of the things that I had been interested in is the overlay of where are our kids coming from, and then the social determinants from the health department stuff. So it'd just be, the base would be where are they coming from, and then data from the health department. And I think that the reason I want that is because if we can zero in on a specific area and start there, I think we would probably have a lot more measurable outcomes for that data. With the domestic violence education, one of the other things that I think might be worth having a conversation about, talking about, is human trafficking. That is huge, and I think it would be a good thing for staff to also be educated on, so that they could look at or be able to monitor or see what some of the signs are for that. I know that's been out there for a long time on the east and west coast, and it's kind of coming this way, and
doesn't receive the attention it deserves.
Right, exactly.
By any stretch.
I would like more information on the how do we adopt a unit, because I would love for this board to do that. If we find out the details of what we have to do,
yep.
I would love for that to happen. And then on the drug and alcohol education, we are seeing again an increase in the opioid and heroin issues. And I can't tell you, I have a friend who's a commissioner in Florida, and the deaths, they had like 592 deaths last year from opioid and heroin abuse. And it's on the rise to surpass that for this year. And one of the things she pointed out was the governor won't declare that an epidemic, was easily declaring the Zika epidemic that didn't kill anybody, but here you have an opioid heroin abuse situation, and there's no epidemic being called for at the state level in Florida, and so I don't want that to happen here. I have had conversations with our Attorney General, who's going to present the information about opioid and heroin abuse at our county board workshop coming up at the end of May, beginning of June, which I'm excited about, because again, it's been out there, east and west coast, but slowly migrating into the central
Yeah, it's here.
region. And
we're seeing more kids that are actually IV drug users right now, too.
Yep. And heroin is becoming very easily attainable, and cheaper. And
more powerful.
Supposedly it's purer and better high, and I mean it's all kinds of stuff that I think we need to be educated on, and then incorporate that in some type of the programming that we do on the drug and alcohol. How many participate in the EPIC on a, do we
kids?
Keep track of that on, like, does it meet, did you say every day or?
Monday through Friday.
Monday through Friday?
So it's, currently we have 8 kids in the evening reporting and then 3 in the day reporting.
Okay. And is there maybe some opportunity there to get a higher increase
Yes.
in? Okay, we're looking at that.
Yeah, they've, Boys and Girls Club have provided space for us over there, which has been fantastic. Unfortunately, that space will be not available during the summer, and we're going to continue this programming in the summer. And so they'll end up coming back to the youth center, it looks like, for the summer. There's hope, and it seems realistic that that space at the Boys and Girls Club will be more permanent.
Okay.
Soon.
All right. And then on the DMC issue, again, I think from Levon and Mark's presentation, the biggest takeaway is, and I fully support this 100 or 1,000%, is that we need a DMC coordinator that is accountable to this board to be able to attain the information that we need from the different system points and to be held accountable to finding those solutions. And again, if you look across the country, some of the biggest dents that they've made in the issue in other jurisdictions is having someone that's higher up than just volunteer groups that address that. So I think that that's huge, and we need to do that. The GED, good change, was it good, bad? I'm looking at these numbers and I'm thinking bad. But I understand some of the reason, but I mean, are we actually hurting kids now because they're not able to obtain it? Once they get out, then they're not able to obtain a job?
Well, clearly I think kids are going to be better off if they have a high school diploma or a GED. And so if the truancy problem doesn't improve and kids are hitting that 18-year-old mark and all of a sudden they don't have to go to school, and so we're leaving it up to them to show up at a GED program, that worries me a little bit.
Right, yeah.
Previously we would work with the kids on their GED if
right.
that was the direction they needed to go, and I think you saw there, we helped a number of kids.
Is that coordinated with the EPIC program?
Yeah, that's
GED,
over there.
It is?
Yep.
All right. And then on the mental health, I mean, sometimes I know there are kids in our youth center who have done very, very, very bad things, and they need to answer for those.
Mm-hmm.
Other times I think we forget that they're kids and that there are special needs that some of these kids have, or actually special attention that they need because they don't have it, which I think leads to some of the behavioral problems. But then also at the adult corrections, Commissioner Boyle and I had worked with the Brain Injury Association to come in, and they added a piece of the assessment on intake about brain injury. That may be something we want to look at the youth piece of it on intake, seeing if we can start collecting some of that, and if there's interest there, maybe we can try to coordinate that, because a lot of times youth that enter at the youth side end up at our adult side, and I will probably guarantee you that once they start looking at the data, and it's huge, the ones that are reporting not only just a brain injury but multiple brain injuries, that they happened at the youth age, and now they're in our adult.
I think it would be interesting for you to hear from our psychologist at some point, going through some of the issues that he sees. And
Yep. so maybe we can introduce you to the director of the Brain Injury Association and see what maybe we could do on
Sure.
the youth portion of it. And then I'm still a big believer in the meditation and yoga piece. We're implementing that in the adult side as a pilot, and I would still love to try that on the youth side, especially with the high use of psychotropic drugs. It's been actually stated, I mean, there's lots of papers out there if you read, use of psychotropic drugs decrease with alternative methods for kids to be able to have a different way of dealing with their stress and problems, even if it is the everyday occurrences of losing a boyfriend or girlfriend. I mean, it's huge.
Right.
And so we'd just like to maybe re-engage that conversation with you all to see if we could do that. And then lastly, I would really like for you to lay out for us, besides the things that we mentioned, or alternatives for mental health, is what do you need? I mean, we've centered our focus, and rightfully so, hugely on our adult population. And I think that if anything we take away from these presentations that you're going to do, it's that mental health piece. And what is it that we need to do at our youth center, in our juvenile justice system, to be able to try to head this off at those early ages versus the older ages. So think about that, and maybe we can have further discussions. And like you say, Region 6 has been extraordinarily supportive of our needs, but maybe we can regroup and figure out something else or additional needs that we can take care of. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Commissioner Rogers. All right. With that, I look forward to our continued discussions on the youth center stuff.
Mark reminded me. Commissioner Kraft, we talked about the books that we received in Barnes & Noble, and I get these huge thick envelopes a couple of times a month with all these magazines that he shares, and we pass on to the kids. So he's not here, but just wanted to say thank you. He might be watching, so thank you. And thank you all for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. With that, Human Resources weekly personnel report as presented. Legislation, again, if you've been watching any of the floor debate that's going on, it's getting quite lively down there because it's budget time, and so we'll continue to watch and monitor what happens with that. You have the report, so I won't go through all the specifics. Do we have executive session for union and litigation? Is there, if there's nothing else? Okay. Is there a second? Second. Motion and a second. Please vote. And there is a committee meeting, Child and Youth, at 1 o'clock.
Commissioner Boyle, are you a yes? Okay, motion passes.